Today's video was selected for you by my gorgeous patrons, so thank you very much to them for making this selection. And if you would like to be involved in future video polls and also have access to the Discord, the one card riff video every month and other privileges as well, check out the tiers. I will leave all the information down below. Hello there, my little cupcakes. Welcome back to my channel. Thank you for joining me for this exploration of some of the more questionable elements of the spiritual and witchcraft spaces. I'm a little bit nervous that my patrons have chosen this particular subject because it does involve me getting a little bit real about some of the stuff that I think can be a bit more problematic or that I don't think is helpful necessarily for people. And I want to hear from you as well. You know, if there's anything in this list of things today that I talk about that you feel has kind of burned you or been, you know, kind of a difficulty for you. It's made things worse. It's been something unpleasant that you've experienced when you've been zipping around in the spiritual space, trying to find people to follow or books to read or new ideas to bring into your practice. Has any of this stuff been an issue? And is there anything that I don't cover in this video that you also want to talk about or want to get other people's perspectives on? The comments section is there for you, nice and open, for you to say whatever you want, dig into your feelings, talk about your experiences. I think it's a really good place to exchange. So this video could be 3 times as long as it's going to be, I think. And that's to say nothing for all of the wonderful things that I think this community and the adjacent communities, you know, all the communities that overlap under the spiritual umbrella. I think there's a lot of good that has come out of those connections and those people bringing forth their ideas and their teachings and their books and everything. Certainly a lot of good that I could say. But I think in terms of things that piss me off or that I have seen to be unhelpful or unhealthy, there's more I could say. But I'm going to make this video into a collection of things I can think of right now that I would like to maybe vent about and bring attention to. A lot of what this video is about is just vigilance, guys. You know, it's just about being cautious. It's about knowing that we can be discerning about what is helpful to us and what is more of a hindrance to us on our journey, and really making some strong decisions about how we want to shape our ingestion of spiritual material as we go forward. So I think it's good to witness that there are some techniques and there are some mindsets in spirituality that could cause us issues, and that it's okay if those things are not our particular flavour. And I think it's also okay to call shit out where we see it and we might feel it needs to be called out. So, you know, this is just a permission slip, I think. If you know that you want to be more vigilant as you go forward, I'm here to encourage you to know that that is okay and that it is your absolute right as a consumer of spiritual products and services and content. If you want to dive into some of these things and think, yeah, has that ever caused me any harm? Have I witnessed that there is an issue there? Is that not particularly something that I want to pursue in my own spiritual work? I think the reality is that spiritual spaces are not always friendly. They're not always healthy. They're not always safe, and they're not always transparent. And I don't think there's anything wrong with drawing attention to that and, you know, being careful with ourselves and each other with the full knowledge as we go forward that, you know, we can choose our spiritual teachers and our spiritual resources with those things in mind, and we can keep ourselves as safe as possible while we're doing all of these wonderful things and exploring all of these wonderful materials. I think it's good to know that we can be with ourselves. And if something does not feel right in your water and you know that you need to step away, it's not for you, it's not having a good effect on you, you have every right to be able to do that. The first thing I want to get my chops around in this video, I think, is the danger of very hardline or very dictatorial views. The kinds of views that when you are being taught by somebody with these views, you feel railroaded, you feel pressured, you feel intimidated. You're starting to feel like anything that came to you through your personal gnosis of working within a practice or working with a deity is not okay and doesn't count. It's plain wrong. You didn't experience it the way you experienced it, you know, because this person, this teacher, this author is correct and knows the correct way of doing something. And that very heavy-handed teaching style, I think, can make a lot of people feel very cut adrift and, like I said, very pressured into doing things the way that a teacher is strongly advising, you know, demanding them that they do it that way instead of looking at the way that is best for them. In witchcraft and spirituality, there are quite a lot of strong views and they are often very enticingly delivered to us, you know, and I don't think there's anything wrong with having strong views on how you should work with a deity or what you should do magically or how things are supposed to operate. What I don't like is when those views are, very heavily fed to the followers, the audience, the people with a membership, so that they feel like they cannot dissent from those views and that they need to be kind of molded into the type of practitioner that a particular teacher thinks they should be. I spoke in a video a while ago called Deity is Dangerous, Should You Really Fear the Gods? Is the name of the video. I'll link it down below. I spoke in that video about the sheer amount of times that I had been experiencing people coming to me, having a spiritual counseling session or a deity reading, and just being completely confused and bent out of shape about what is going on between them and their deity, and basically fighting with themselves about experiences that they'd had, or, things that they felt moved to offer their deity, or ways that they felt they wanted to communicate, but they were pushing back on themselves. And many of them said to me, like, I have a teacher, or I work with someone online, or I'm in someone's Discord who is very, very sure that I should offer these things and I should do it in this way, and this is the kind of personality that my deity has, and I'm not feeling those things, but I feel like I'm wrong because other people are going with this person, and I feel like I'm having kind of a contrary experience, and so I'm wondering if I'm wrong, if I'm making it up in my head, like what is wrong with me. And I realized that the thing that was happening was that some people's views are so enticing and, like I said, so hardline and so convincing that these people were starting to feel like they could not just have their own experience and see the merit in that experience. They had to kind of come over to this other person's very larger than life character and really adamant pursuit of their own personal truth and trying to convince others of that. And really, I think there's a lot of fear-mongering in that. There are definitely, teachers and resources in the community, and have been for a long time, that take various things like deity work and practices and stuff and make it into a very fear-mongering thing where it's like, if you don't do it like this, you're going to fuck it up. And if you don't do these things first, then this thing is going to go wrong. And if you think this deity is going to allow you to work with this other deity, you're dead wrong. That's going to be dangerous. That deity is not going to like that. And you're going to incur the wrath of Loki if you do this thing or that thing. I've never been able to get on board with any of that stuff. I think it's clearly and plainly obvious to me from all of the years that I've been doing deity work and working with other witches that do deity work, that those relationships come in all shapes and sizes. They are based upon your psyche and your personal set of experiences, and no one has the right to tell you shit. They have a really beautiful opportunity to advise you with their own experiences and what they think and what has been the case for them. But when the language starts to go into like, these are the rules and this is what should and should not be done, and you are in danger if you've had this experience or you've done it this way. I mean, of course, that can be really scary, really unhelpful. It can play on people's minds. It can push people away from having their own very rich and intricate practice. So I think it can just be very heavy-handed on the fear-mongering and the warnings and the disclaimers and the, you need to do it like this. And sometimes, let's face it, that fear-mongering, very insistent language is linked to something like buy my course, buy my workshop, become a member of XYZ thing, give your money to me for me to very adamantly and heavy-handedly tell you what to do. So sometimes there is a financial element. Let's not lie about that. Let's not lie. I've met a few people who've had really valid experiences, or they have a really sort of valid belief structure when it comes to what they're doing in their craft. And they have met someone online, or they've fallen in with a specific teacher who has tried to very, very adamantly scare them out of those beliefs and disparage them if they do not let go of those beliefs. And I think that's got a bit of a culty vibe to it, to be honest. I don't think there's any reason for that. When I first became interested in hell and I was really connecting up with her, I came across this crap on the forums. People just saying to me, like, you've got to be really careful. There's so much danger working with hell because Loki's her dad, and these are all the things that can happen. And I guess I'm lucky in a way, because I would just read those things and be like, okay, I didn't request this insight from you. It's not the vibe that I'm picking up. So thanks for the warning, I guess, but I did not look at it and be like, oh my God, I need to change everything I'm doing. I need to create all these forms of protection. Loki's going to come and bite my head off for trying to dance with his daughter. Like, where the fuck does that even come from? You know what I think a lot of that kind of tone is? I think genuinely that it's a hangover from the Abrahamic religion and the way that so much focus is placed on doing things correctly or incurring the wrath of God. You know, a lot of it is a hangover from that. It's that same kind of language. It's someone setting themselves up as the authority on how things are supposed to be with a specific deity, and then getting really kind of like scary, essentially. They're trying to scare other people into submitting and subjugating to their will as the person that has more knowledge of this God, you know? And I think that that's where a lot of it comes from. Either that, or it's just a massive play for control. Like someone comes in and they want to be the authority on this God or on this set of practices. And they want to be the authority to the detriment of anybody else because they're trying to build their business and build their ego and build their legacy. I think as soon as somebody starts to become really like almost alarmingly and creepily interested in making sure you are doing something the right way in witchcraft, already I'm kind of giving that the side eye, and I'm like, okay, calm down. This is really not to do with you. You know, like there's really no need for you to go hard to try and freak me out of the instinct that I'm having or the experience that I'm having. Like, the experience, newsflash, is between me and my goddess. It's really not to do with you. So you don't need to worry. I think a lot of people who grew up in an Abrahamic setting were taught about the nature of God and about the instructions, etc., through the Bible. And I think that people that then come into the witchcraft space and they say, like, I am the first and last word in what to do with the Morrigan. I am the one who can tell you what Loki will and will not like. You have dishonored or displeased this God by giving them this kind of offering. I feel like that looks like an Abrahamic hangover to me, and it looks like somebody trying to instate themselves as being the Bible of that deity, instead of just acknowledging that, like, there are no Bibles over here. We have a thing called consensus, and consensus can be interesting so far as being a guiding sort of reference for us. But it's not something that we want to stay stuck in. We want to have our own independent, unverified personal gnosis, if you will. And there is no reason to come and try and like hammer that out of somebody. Just let them have it, you know. But there are those voices that I think seek to really make a massive dent in your sense of who you are as a witch, so that instead of trusting yourself, you have to follow them, you know. I've definitely been noticing for the last maybe 4, maybe 5 years now in my own practice as a spiritual counselor and witchcraft mentor, that some of the work that I'm doing with my clients one-on-one is about undoing some of that heavy-handed advice, or helping somebody to ease the fear and the tension that has come from receiving that kind of advice, or seeing it online and seeing other people agree with it and everybody getting very adamant that they like know the way. A client will come to me and be like, I don't think I agree with that, but I'm kind of scared now. I don't think I can go in my own direction. I am questioning what it is that I'm going through in my mystical experience because I'm reading these people or seeing these people saying that's wrong for a start. You know, if that's happening, then you're not even talking to the God you think you're talking to. And it's all just very bullshit and super egoic. And I've had to really help clients come back to a sense of themselves and their spiritual autonomy. So one thing that I would say to look out for is just anything that seems really fucking heavy-handed, where this person is professing to have, you know, the only access to the right information about something metaphysical. I just feel like there's definitely room for artistic interpretation. There's room for personal exploration. There's room for finding your own set of tenements and techniques that work for you. And if somebody is claiming that that is not the case, then I think that's worth doubting. That's worth looking at with a little bit more discernment. I was having this conversation with a witch a long time ago, and they were saying to me, you know, Kellyanne, some people actually want a teacher, a charismatic, very self-assured teacher, to come in and like tell them what to do. You know, that's actually the vibe that they're looking for. So people seek out the teacher that they most want. And some want a teacher that has like a very clear 10-point manifesto on what to do and how to do this. And, you know, just because that's not what you would want doesn't mean it's not what they want. And so, yeah, if you're looking for something like that, if you're looking for someone with like super big confidence, you know, massive metaphysical balls who can say, these are exactly the things you should do, and then you will get this guaranteed incredible luminous experience. I mean, don't let me stop you. I'm just saying that for a lot of people, that's definitely caused more trouble than it's created solutions. I wanted to talk in this video a little bit about bossy, heavy-handed, or very scary readings that people are given. In the tattoo industry, quite a lot of the work that is done there is about covering up or reworking shitty tattoos. Some of them are old tattoos, fair enough. They just need a little bit of a, little bit more pizzazz because they're old now. But a lot of tattoo artists actually specialize in doing work to cover up tattoos that have not gone well and weren't what the person wanted, and that tattoo artist will do the best they can to kind of like finesse what is there, cover up what they can, and make something different out of the image. And I feel that as a tarot reader, I have a certain amount of that work too. I work with clients who have had a very bossy, very scary, heavy-handed reading with like really freaky insights in it about how someone's husband is going to leave them, or they're going to die, or they're going to get ill, or the whole of their year is going to be a bad year. The cards will be turned over and the client will just be told like, oh, there's a lot of bad here and there's a lot going wrong and this person's going to fuck you over and you're going to have problems over here. And it's just all been very disempowering and just like kind of freaky, with not really any advice to support that person in this supposedly ugly journey that they're about to be taking, with all of these horrible things that are going to befall them. And so a client will come to me and be like, I've had a reading that really fucking scared me, Kellyanne, and I just need to know what the cards are saying from you. And lucky for them, I do not work in that way. And if there are warning signs or shadows in a reading, ample advice will be given on how to redirect one's path accordingly, how to protect oneself, etc. Because I'm very action oriented and I'm very person centered and I'm very about throwing all of your power at the problem. So even if there do seem to be problematic elements, we will go through that in depth and there will be lots of advice for solo work given. So I feel in that way that I am a little bit of a cover up tattoo artist in a sense, but in the kind of card slinger area of things. There are lots of very, very good, exceptionally proficient readers out there. I am by no means the first, and I will not be the last, to feel that I myself can really do good things with the cards. But there are also readers that relish very much, I think, giving these very alarmist readings that are supposed to frighten you. Heavy-handed readings are highly hard predictive. So they're very much like, this will happen to you and you will have to do this and this is what you must do next, So it can seem very controlling, that vibe of reading. Usually those kinds of readings come with no words of comfort. They don't come with advice. They don't come with any options for change. And so that can be a problem. And sometimes these kinds of readers also encourage you to purchase further things with them. And that can be a telltale sign that they are using their power as the reader to do something unscrupulous, because they're really trying to get more money out of you. So they will say, you need to come back for another reading at this time, or you need to pay me to do this spell to undo this awful thing I've seen in this reading. I mean, we all know about this kind of scam, right? And it is a scam. So you've got to be really careful when you're taking that kind of advice or you're having that kind of experience, that you notice when there is a price tag attached to the comfort that you would like to feel in the event of having heard these things that have happened in the reading. If somebody makes you feel unsettled, they make you feel scared, they make you feel very worried about what's coming, and they then give you some kind of paid product or service that will lift that tension, then you know that that tension has been artificially created, and you've got to be really careful about that kind of practitioner. They are not behaving in a scrupulous and ethical manner. They are trying to freak you out to then turn a profit from you. Be very wary of readers that are rude to you. Be wary of readers that do not smile at you. They do not make you feel comfortable in any way. They are there straight away to induce fear and to create tension. Be very wary of readers that openly and sometimes harshly criticize your life choices. Beware of readers that do nothing to make you feel that they appreciate the degree of vulnerability and sensitivity that is involved in opening up your life to someone with a deck of cards or a set of runes or a crystal ball, whatever it might be. If you're coming across that energy, that's not actually fair and it's not professional. You can definitely come across readers who say on their website that they are very honest and they're very straightforward. They don't sugarcoat the pill. And sometimes that's really the kind of reader that you are looking for, right? It's a reader that will be like, I tell it how the fuck it is. You ask a question, I give the answer. That's how I am. That's the kind of reader I am. I'm much more of a Queen of Swords reader than a Queen of Cups reader. If somebody describes themselves in that way, then I think it can just be a way of saying, this is my reading style. This is how I will talk to you. This is how I will give the messages of the cards. I don't think that's necessarily a red flag right off the bat. I do think there are a lot of readers who describe themselves as readers that will not sugarcoat the pill. They will necessarily just give you what they see in the cards, and that's fine. There are definitely readers that cross the line into being intentionally disquieting and not comforting and making you feel like you're suddenly in this position of powerlessness and you need to take everything on that they're saying to you. And even if they're not trying to sell you anything else, sometimes they're just trying to sell themselves on how fucking good they are at telling you every terrible thing that's going to befall you. But if you notice that they're doing that with like no advice, no insight, no sense of direction for what is supposed to happen next, and you leave that reading feeling really uncomfortable or sincerely upset, or as though you wish you hadn't spent the money, then you've had an experience that you don't deserve to have to repeat. No one deserves to go through something like that. A reading should be nurturing. A reading should be interesting. A reading should, give you some things to contemplate, maybe some warning signs, maybe some shadows that you need to unpack. I'm not saying that every reader should blow smoke up your fucking arse, but I am saying that there are readers that are, I think, doing it for the wrong reasons and not really considering how you need to feel as the person who is cracking their soul open for them and telling them some things about your life that you want guidance on. And they've kind of taken that and they've backed up over it with their psycho-spiritual car and made you feel really uncomfortable about the fact that you ever had the reading in the first place. We don't like that. We don't want that. That sucks. And I think it brings the entire industry of card slinging down. And since I have so much skin in the card slinging game at this point, I am literally surrounded by cards right now as we speak. Surrounded by cards, darling. Here we go. I've got cards there. I've got cards there. Oh, there's another deck here. So there's lots of card slinging goes on a daily basis in my apartment, and I do not like the idea that people are having these kinds of experiences that would make them feel that getting a tarot reading is an innately scary thing to do. It doesn't have to be. I feel like a good card slinger will really understand the innate value and power in the cards, and some card slingers want to use that innate value and power to give that empowerment forward, to make the querent feel like they have options, to make the querent feel like they have been given clarity in some way. I think other card slingers want to use that same innate power of the cards to make themselves feel that they have been able to control the querent's mood, to scare the querent if they want to make the querent be in their powerlessness. And I just think that's really sad. I don't know why anybody would want to use the cards in that way, but that is happening. So I guess, take note of that, be cautious of that. Make sure you read reviews if you can, or feel into the person's work before you buy a reading with them. Know that that is someone that you really want a reading with, someone that you feel you could trust to be able to deliver advice in a compassionate way. And like I said, a reader does not have to mollycoddle you. They don't have to infantilize you, but they must respect you, and they must not be trying to shill more stuff to you so they can solve problems for you that they fucking started in the first place by being so scary or so heavy-handed or so hard predictive. And I think as well, be careful of readers that give you really hardcore or really hardline advice about things you didn't even ask for. Readers should be good at understanding what you came to the reading for. They shouldn't be going massively off track into other things. And if they want to, they should ask you first. They could say something like, oh, there's other things coming up if you want to know, or if you're interested. I feel like what is coming up in the reading, the information, goes beyond the scope of what you requested the reading for. So if you would like to know, I can tell you. But no reader should be having you for a reading about finances and saying, oh, something's going on with your husband, he's not to be trusted. That's just they're way overstepping there. They are way overstepping. One thing I definitely look out for a lot is heavy-handed or exploitative language and kind of high-pressure sales tactics. Unfortunately, that's not something that we're strangers to in the spiritual community. It happens in the spiritual community just about as much as it happens in any other industry. And I think that's really a shame, So let me just talk through some of the things, the language that I see in marketing and branding and product copy that I feel betrays a kind of sense of trying to make you feel small or incapable before convincing you that their product could fix you or build you up in some way. They're really trying to put you on the back foot within yourself before they sell you something, and there's really no need for that. So things like promising really grandiose outcomes that can't be guaranteed. That's definitely one thing I would say that I see, that I think is unfortunate and I would have cause to question. Over exaggerating results and making out that those results are the standard. You know, I think with a lot of stuff that is to do with spiritual work and inner work and learning metaphysical concepts, we have to be careful about the fact that even if we have very good testimonials that kind of explain other people's positive experiences, that we don't make out that that's going to be the standard for everyone, or that it is the only way that you can get that kind of outcome. You know, there is no one right teacher for everybody. So if somebody is claiming to be the only way that you can get to proficiency in something, or you can get to have a certain spiritual experience, I think that's worth questioning as well. I think any fear-based sales tactics and high pressure offers can be called into question. For example, you know, if you don't buy this course, you will miss out on the only way to solve your problem. Buy now, I'm only doing this price for one day. I don't see any point in having that kind of like fear-based, it's only this price for one day, get it now, get it now. That's creating a kind of financial pressure that's going to surely cloud somebody's ability to be able to know if they want something or not. I don't mind things like early bird pricing, you know, like come in the first week and it will be less money for you than if you wait and buy later, I guess. But I think just this like 24-hour flash sale, get it now or lose it forever, can really cloud someone's judgment, and it can make someone feel like, oh my God, I'm panicking. Oh fuck, I have to do it now. And I just feel like, okay, that's about a cash injection for the person and not really about what you might need or what you would ordinarily buy. In the spiritual community, just as much as in any other community, there are also people that are shilling products without disclosing that they make money from them. So if you suspect that someone is affiliated and is making money every time they sell whatever it is they're selling, then you have the right to ask them. You have the right to email them or comment and say, are you affiliated with this product in any way? Because it can change the way somebody views it or the way somebody tries to sell it, right? Because they're benefiting from selling it. Now, there's nothing wrong with people having a video sponsored or being affiliated with a company. There's nothing wrong with somebody working to advertise someone's retreat or someone's whatever it is they're selling. But I do think it's important that they let you know that they're affiliated with that. You know, when I have a video sponsored by a company, I explain that I'm being sponsored. I explain that it benefits me if you click on the link or if you get a free trial or whatever it is. And you should always be told that. It's still up to you whether or not you trust me that I genuinely think it's a good product or service. And I would hope that you do trust me. But I've put it out there. I've been transparent. There is nothing that I am marketing that I'm financially affiliated with or that I benefit from without telling you so. And that should always be the standard. Hidden fees are a problem in the spiritual community, you know, going into something, purchasing something at a low level price or getting into something for free and then finding out that there are lots of extra costs once you get started, or you can't really access the thing you were told you'd be able to access without spending money. I think that's a mark against a spiritual teacher or creator if they're going to be doing something like that. That's not pleasant. Definitely exploiting pain points too much. I see that in the spiritual community a lot. It is a very common marketing tactic in other industries as well. And it kind of involves really going for the pain points. Now, when you're marketing something, you should be able to state the problem that whatever you're marketing is going to help a person solve, you know? So if I'm selling a course about how to read tarot, I will say things like, are you ready to take your tarot learning to the next level? Do you feel that you're kind of going round in circles and you want to really break through and learn the cards more intimately? Those are using pain points. That kind of marketing is using pain points because it's really saying, is this your problem? My item solves your problem. Is this what's going on? My product speaks to that. So we have to have a little bit of that in marketing, but pushing on the pain points, really exaggerating them, can create this horrible sense that somebody is bereft of this thing that they need to buy in order to solve that problem. So if you ever see anything like, you know, do you feel like a loser? Do you feel like you're not even a witch? You know, does nothing ever go right for you in this area? Do you wish you could live my life and understand the things that I understand? Are you at the end of your tether and desperate for results? You know, I think that goes beyond naming the problem and stating how the product you're selling could help. I think it goes into overstating the value of the product through appealing to someone's deepest pain. And I think it comes across as cynical and exploitative and uncaring. especially if they haven't given any free content at any point that would help you with that problem. It's all behind a paywall, and they're using your pain points. They're using what it is you're most insecure about or most upset about to get you to buy. I just find that to be really icky. So yeah, there are some exploitative sales tactics going on. I think it's always worth it looking out for them and just making sure that it's okay that we see that those things are happening, that we don't necessarily just allow that and fall for that. I want to talk a little bit about conspirituality, darlings. Okay, that's not me coining that phrase, by the way. That was someone else that wrote a paper about it a while ago. I can't remember who, but I think it's a very good little portmanteau there. Conspirituality. There is definitely a peddling of unfounded and unscientific conspiracies that goes on in the spiritual community. I think that I've seen all kinds of things, from stuff about the dangers of Wi-Fi to the causes of cancer, the idea that all of COVID was a pandemic and the vaccine is designed to make us all into sheeple. There is definitely a meeting, I think, of the far left and the far right, and of the spiritual and the non-spiritual. I was having a conversation with someone recently about how strange it is that a lot of the unfounded conspiracies that are very popular in the far right are also the same ones that have gained popularity in the spiritual community. And I was saying that I feel like a lot of the reason for that is because we're looking at people who fundamentally and deeply distrust mainstream narratives. And there's nothing wrong with regarding mainstream narratives with a bit of a side eye. Like, I think that's a very good and clever use of time and mental faculties to do that in some ways. But I think that when you get a bunch of people together, whatever their politics are, whatever their worldviews are, who are highly distrustful of media, who are, you know, distrustful always of any mainstream narrative, no matter how much it's backed up by science or anything like that, then you get a bunch of people who are, you know, very open to alternative notions of the truth. And I also think that conspiracy capitalism is just a really big thing now, and people in the spiritual community are trying to make money just like everybody else on the planet, and some of them would like to do that full time, and some of them would like to get very rich doing that. And conspiracies feed entrepreneurialism and they feed profit, you know, all kinds of different things that we can sell that are propped up by conspiracy theories and by unfounded scientific narratives are putting a lot of money in a lot of different bank accounts. You know, we've got like herbal teas that are supposed to heal COVID. There's crystals that are supposed to help with every kind of illness, including cancer. You've got your fluoride-free toothpaste. You've got your alternatives to sunscreen, alternate medications, books and workshops about whatever the thing is that's supposed to make you feel scared and like you need to do something, you know. I've got here in my notes, it says, in the US, Dr. Joseph Merkler, a Florida osteopathic physician, is well known for spreading misinformation about COVID-19 and was identified by the Center for Countering Digital Hate as one of the most prolific peddlers of anti-vaccine falsehoods. At the same time, he is selling alternative wellness products that have gained him an estimated net worth in excess of $100 million. This is what I mean about conspiracy entrepreneurialism, conspiracy capitalism. If you set up a lot of fear based on a lot of unfounded shit, and you ask people to look in this totally different direction, away from mainstream science, away from mainstream medicine, and towards this other way that you insist is safer and is wiser, you then can attach a lot of products and services to that, a lot of workshops, a lot of different items, a lot of medications that will make you a great deal of money. So I guess what I'm trying to suggest is that you behave with discernment, check it out, feel into it, think it through, you know. I do think that there are a lot of people in the spiritual community who have been let down. There's no question of that. They've been let down by Western medicine. They have been let down by the mental health services. And so they are looking for other things. And I don't think there's anything wrong with combining stuff with, you know, spiritual complementary therapies or alternative ways of looking at things. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But I think there's also a really, really clever way that we can play on fear and apathy that comes from people having difficult experiences with mainstream science and medicine. And I think that can lead to a lot of really nasty little rabbit holes that I see, that I look at, and I'm just like, yeah, okay. You know, just people training you to distrust the very clean water that comes out of your fucking first world taps. Can lead to things like, you can get this $150 bottle that does these things and it's infused with crystals and then your water will be okay. It's like, honey, your water is okay. Fucking trust me. Your water is fine. Oh my gosh. I have a lot to say about people in the spiritual community being anti-medication. I've written a lot of notes on that because I see that as being quite insidious in a lot of ways. The language around medication can be very dangerous, and that is not to discount the fact that there are people that have had difficult or negative experiences with medications, and they've had to make decisions about changing medications and really coming to a point where they feel okay with their body again after being given the wrong combination of meds, or just finding that meds have had a really negative impact on them. So I'm not saying that that doesn't happen, but the idea that medication itself can lead to things like, you know, being spiritually disconnected, having kind of a foggy attachment to your deities, an inability to feel deeply into your practice, that you basically can't be spiritual if you're using medications, especially mental health medications, that can be really insidious. It can make someone who requires medication for quality of life feel that they have a choice between their medication and their spiritual evolution. And that does not have to be true in any world. I really, really want to say that. It does not have to be true. So if you're coming up against this narrative and you're thinking, well, my anti-anxiety meds or my medications that I use for pain or whatever seem to be doing the trick and they seem to be working for me, but I'm also being told that I'm not going to be able to connect fully to Goddess, I'm not going to be able to astral travel, I'm not going to be able to do whatever it is, please come away from those narratives. They are not serving you. They are highly cynical and they can be very exploitative. And I think they can create this sense of superiority, this idea that if you're not on any medications, you are having the highest form of spiritual experience, higher than others who do need to rely on medications. And I think that's deeply unfair. You know, I've seen things online about how taking mental health meds numbs you out, you know, so that you can't be spiritually connected. And yes, some mental health medications do numb you out for very good reasons, such as to curb your suicidal ideation. So I think there's also a fundamental lack of understanding about how much good some mental health medications can really do a person. And instead, you're just trying to convince them that, like, they don't have what it takes to be in the spiritual fast lane. Because they're taking these meds and they need to eventually come off of these meds. I think when you come across people who are teaching something that really resonates with you and you find a community around that seem to really get what it is that you think and feel about spirituality, you start to feel like you're part of a family. And when the leader, the head of that family, starts telling you that the next step for you is to get rid of your ADHD medication or get rid of your antidepressant, get rid of your chronic pain medication, it's really hard sometimes to be strong within yourself and say to yourself, I don't think that's quite right. I think that's going to cause me more harm than good. You know, it puts you into a vulnerable situation where you want to feel like you're part of the group, and the teacher has advised lots of things that do work for you and they do seem sensible to follow. But then they start talking way beyond their remit and kind of adopting beliefs on stuff that they have no jurisdiction and no medical training to speak out on. So please be careful of that. That's definitely something that I've seen. There's nothing wrong with people giving testimonials about how they felt so much more spiritually connected and they felt better when they came off of medications, but that doesn't mean that's going to be the case for you. It doesn't mean that it is, you know, an absolute blanket statement that includes everyone and involves everyone. It might not be that way for you at all, and you could end up putting yourself into massive danger through taking on that advice and thinking that, like, oh yeah, that must be the case for everyone. Not necessarily. It may not be the case for you, and you may put yourself in grave danger if you don't receive some medical advice first before ceasing your medication. I've seen some people using language such as, like, oh, if you do these things or you buy these products or you undergo these practices, it will help you come off all of your medications and feel better without any medications. I think that's dangerous because it kind of makes the assumption that it's always supposed to be the goal to be off meds, that it's never healthy to be on them. And it puts the seed of an idea into a person's mind that they always need to replace meds with a spiritual practice, and that should be the goal. And it doesn't necessarily have to be. I think there's a lot of unsolicited advice in spirituality about meds. I, for one, have had my decision to use contraception openly criticised on a number of occasions. And I've been advised to come off my medication and, like, go natural, you know. It really helps you, you know, Kellyanne, you'll be out of step with your spiritual experience if you don't come off meds. Honestly, I have one thing to say on that, bitch. If you want to come and look after me during a natural menstrual cycle, then be my fucking guest. But unless you're going to come to to my house and see me through the hell that usually has always been for me, then I don't want to hear you say anything else about my relationship with my own contraception, okay? There's such a thing against contraception in the spiritual community. I know there are lots of people that have had difficult experiences with it. I understand the medical misogyny that is, mixed into that horrible stew. So please don't come and think you need to educate me on that, because you really don't. I know why there are so many people that have had difficult experiences. And for a lot of people with contraception, you do need to kiss a few frogs before you find your prince, if you know what I mean. There is a little bit of exploration to be done. And some people will have their body really fucked over by contraception. And that is such a shame. But even without asking me my own history of contraception, people will just be like, oh, that's the problem. Oh, you need to come off that. Oh, you're on medication. You're on contraception. Oh, that explains everything. Get off that. That really fucks you up spiritually. I've literally had someone say that really fucks you up spiritually. Do you know what fucks me up spiritually? The 7-day excruciatingly painful, very heavy period that I have when I'm not on some kind of internal contraception. When I'm not on hormonal contraception, that's really the thing that fucks me up spiritually, sweetheart. So just be very careful before you come along with your heavy-handed, buttered toast of completely unmedical advice. Just be careful that you know that everybody is different and some people don't need to hear that shit. A lot of the teaching that takes place in the spiritual community is based not on credentials, but on credibility. In other words, we're not really often hearing so much from people that have a degree in the subject as we are hearing from people who have been through the stuff that they're teaching. They used it, it was good for them, they believe in it, and now they want to pay that forward. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I think what it does is it creates a culture of people thinking, mistakenly thinking, it happened to me, so that's what's happening to everyone. It worked for me, so that's what's going to work for everyone. And there are not enough disclaimers, there are not enough caveats, and there's not enough gentle explorative language around these things. There's far too much of that heavy-handed, listen to me, I know the way kind of language. And I find that deeply off-putting. And I would encourage anyone watching this video who's kind of picking up what I'm putting down here to never ever be afraid of finding that language off-putting and seeing it as a red flag, because it may well be. I do think it's really dangerous when spiritual practitioners without medical training are very heavy-handed and opinionated on this stuff, because I know that in the US, for example, there's a whole big clusterfuck around, medical insurance and being able to see a doctor. It's also much harder and takes much longer to see a specialist in this country because of all the shit that we have going on with the NHS. I know it sounds like a perfect system, guys, but unless you're reading about what's going on here, then you really don't know, okay? There are a lot of problems. There are not the kind of problems you have in the US, but there are problems, okay? So because of all these things happening where you can't see a doctor, you can't afford to see a doctor, you have medical debt, it's going to take you 6 months to see a specialist, it can sometimes be tempting for that kind of reason to go to someone who sounds like they've got a lot of confidence on the subject and they can tell you the way and show you the light and maybe even sell you something that will help, I think it's really, again, finding people who are in some sense vulnerable. In this instance, they're medically vulnerable, and giving them the solution. And there's something about that is really just playing God and can get very scary. If you find something, a certain product or a certain spiritual practice, and it claims to be able to heal things, then you're going to want to see some disclaimers to clarify that those claims are not scientifically proven or have not been peer reviewed, I've seen candles that heal migraines. I've seen all that kind of thing. We need to be taking that stuff with a really big bag of salt. There are way more claims about the healing of cancer through various spiritual means than I even want to get into in this video. I do not have the right relationship with my blood pressure to be able to go into that right now. Like I said, I don't have any issue at all with people using complementary therapies, exploring alternative avenues for their healing, mixing and matching things. I don't have a problem with people giving their personal testimonial about how they threw out some, mainstream medicine stuff and instead messed around with other things and found success through that. I have a couple of stories like that in my own life in relation to my chronic pain. I do. There were certain things that mainstream medical advice and medicines were not doing for me that I got via spiritual means. What I have a problem with is people promoting wholesale distrust of doctors, of the medical community, people saying things like, throw your meds away. That will be the most spiritual act you will do, is get rid of all that shit, purify your body, let it be a sacred vessel, a receptacle for spiritual insight. and that will help you. You know what? Like, spiritual insight is very unlikely to help you heal something like your kidney disease. So let's just like really get real about that and start thinking about how uncaring it is to be shilling that kind of information. It's dangerous and it's scary and it leads to major problems. This whole exploration about sort of anti-meds in the spiritual community is making me think more broadly about just spiritual exceptionalism in general, guys. You know, just this idea that like, if you're not doing the spiritual work, then, you know, that's why you're not as good a class of person as us. Or like, you know, you're going to have to shed so many people in your life once you start doing the work because they're just not going to get you anymore because they're not on that level, you know. I see so many weird things about how you level up in some way, you ascend, you become a better version of you, and other people will not be able to kind of catch up. You know, you're not going to be able to interact with the peasantry anymore once you become spiritually illuminated. I'm really always looking out for that language. I find I get a bit of a hair trigger when I experience that kind of language, because I just think that it's alienating and isolating, for one, and that leads into the kind of thing that promotes stuff like cults, which I'm definitely going to go into in a later video. I'm going to talk about that a bit later. But that idea that like you sunshine, when you take on these spiritual ideas, when you do these practices, you will suddenly be a version of yourself that other people will not relate to. You'll have to get away from their low vibrations. You know, they're going to be in their lower frequencies and you're going to be up here ascending. It's just really uncomfortable. It's this idea that if you have this lifestyle and you promote these ideas in your life, then you're going to be a cut above. You're going to be a better class of person than the rest, and they're not going to be able to sit with you, essentially, because you're just going to have all of this extra potency and goodness and wonderment that is going to make other people unable to vibe with you and what you've got going on. And that leads into that stuff about like being anti-meds and things like that, because, you know, in the spiritual community, you can find a lot of people saying that every single physical illness you have, every single mental malady that you have has an energetic root, and that you need to do the spiritual work in order to rid yourself of those issues. And if you're not doing that work, then you're going to continue to come up against the problem. And I think that's spiritual exceptionalism too, this idea that like, I healed myself with these spiritual tools. You too can heal yourself with these spiritual tools. You don't need to be like this riffraff and this peasantry that go to the doctor and do it that way. You can understand what's really going on, which is that everything has this energetic root. And if you just clear your energies, and if you just like, you know, do your chakra healing or whatever, then that's going to bring you to this place where you are immune to the issues of 3D reality. You know, you're literally like above that. You have broken out of the matrix. I don't like any of that kind of wording, you know. I've seen a lot of shit on the internet about how every physical pain you have comes from this energetic, unhealed, unsolved thing, and you just need that wisdom and to be able to fix that thing. Honey, my back injury comes from having a broken L4, okay? I popped it and profoundly herniated it while I was trying to land a snowboarding trick many moons ago. Okay, it has nothing to do with what is unresolved in my spirit. I had a snowboarding accident. That's what happened there. You know, shit happens in life. There isn't this like exceptional second doorway where you have access to these other ways of healing things like that. It's a profound herniation, and we're not going to deal with it by like, you know, repeating mantras or following some eccentric spiritual leader. It is what the fuck it is. I had an accident. It's okay. I'm in a human body. You know, this spiritual exceptionalism, this idea of like that we know these other things and we experience life in this other way, and we're somehow like beyond human in some sense, you know, or other people will not be able to relate to us, or they won't have anything to give us or teach us or exchange with us if they're not on this path doing these things in this very prescriptive manner. I just find that even if I find myself remotely attracted to that kind of language, that's a problem that I'm looking at within myself. I'm like, oh, why am I attracted to that? Because isn't that kind of, you know, assuming that I'm a cut above and that I know these things that these other people don't know? I mean, I think, of course, you can be discerning about who you want to spend your time with and what you want to spend your time talking about and who you feel is worthy of being in your inner sanctum as a friend or whatever. But I think when you attach it to like your degree of spiritual wisdom and how other people can't come and sit with you because they don't have that same understanding, that's where it kind of becomes really ick. I don't like that ick factor. I've seen it in the witchcraft community as well, for sure. You know, I've definitely seen people saying that like People that mishmash different witchcraft stuff together and don't follow like a traditional witchcraft path or whatever are just like missing a trick, and they're not doing the real work, and they're not going to experience real results. And fuck that shit, frankly. If somebody wants a mad pinata of different crap, and that's how they feel like they get on with stuff, then who are you to believe that you're like some fucking big daddy that does the real shit and I just do my little pathetic shit? It's like, if that's what you need to believe, if you need that kind of like that kind of witchcraft exceptionalism where you are the real thing, and somebody else is just a bunch of fool's gold, then all right, I guess that's what you need to believe. I would question why you need to believe that, though. I just think that kind of language puts me off, anything that's kind of evangelical and very like one right way as well, like this is the way, because we know these things and do these things, we are doing it the right way, we are doing it the way that it ought to be done. I just feel like, again, if you need that, if that's something that you feel like you need to believe and you need to convince others to believe, that's fine. But if I felt the need to do that with my spiritual path, I would question that. I would be uncomfortable as I saw those tendencies coming up in myself, and I would strive to do something about that, because people do shit in different ways, and I think that's the spice of life, so if I had convinced myself in some way that like this is the right way, and I was talking to other people as if that was the case without as any caveats, without any disclaimers, I would just be like, oh, okay, no, that's not how I want to do things. That's not what I really think. So what egoic need is that coming from? Let me talk a little bit about spiritual bypassing and cultural insensitivity in the spiritual community. There's so much that I could say about this. I think this is pretty much a video in its own right, but I want to talk about a few things here that I wrote in my notes. In the last few years, I've had a lot of experiences of people telling me that spiritual spaces are not the correct forum to discuss things like racism, abortion rights, gun control, genocide, etc. I think many spiritual teachers are out to promote this whole idea that spirituality should be a space that is safe from any awareness of what the fuck is going on in the world. And therefore, without realizing it, what those spiritual teachers are saying to you is that they want to have a lack of awareness of anything that is going on in your world. If there is anything going on for you that is a spiritual concern for you, that is interrupting or troubling your sense of what it is to be spiritually connected, they don't want to know about that. They haven't educated themselves on that, and they can't help you with that. That's what's going on when they display sensitivity or bypassing around those issues, I would say. And I think when people talk about spiritual healing, personal growth, shadow work, but they don't want to address any of the horrors going on in the world, and they do not want to hear from anyone who is being directly affected by the horrors that go on in the world, we have to kind of question that, because they're talking out of both sides of their mouth. They're talking about healing and shadow and acceptance and confrontation and release and all of these things. But what are they attaching it to? What are they encouraging you to attach it to? Because if they're not able to, really help their audiences become activists for change, or to really look at those wider collective or systemic pains that are happening, that are causing a massive ripple effect and affecting people in their audience or in their community, if they're not speaking to that, then how much are they really walking their talk? And I found there have been certain things that have happened, politically speaking and whatnot, over the past few years, where a lot of spiritual teachers have massively resented other people speaking on that, and they've massively resented being asked to speak on it themselves, even just to clarify their point of view. And I find that to be very weird from people who are also selling spiritual products and services and creating spiritual content. I just find that to be such a massive mismatch. And for me, it's something that I would question. And I talked about that in my last video about, answering accusations on my Palestine activism. I talked about why it is that I've been so vocal about the worry that I feel that spiritual teachers who are claiming to be experts in various different fields are not talking about an active, live streamed, ongoing, very financed by the West kind of genocide that is occurring right now. I just feel that there's a lot of hypocrisy there when it comes to people wanting to shut that down, and not only not talking about it on their own platform or not addressing anything much politically on their own platform, but actively trying to shut down other spiritual teachers who are talking about it by blatantly using their platforms to say that spiritual teachers like me who are speaking on this shit are wrong for doing so. I find that to be not only hypocritical, but actually fairly insidious. And I do not consider myself to be in community with spiritual teachers and mentors and guides like that. I think they are actively working against me, and they are actively working against the things that they claim to be able to teach. That is honestly what I think. And I find that bypassing really is bothersome to me. I find the use of very vague, all-encompassing, very sort of beige language as being a bypass, you know, refusing to be specific about what is going on with marginalized groups being attacked, being under threat of death or injury. I think refusing to be specific for fear of being wrong in what you say, or, you know, showing your arse from lack of education, or even for fear of losing followers, shows that you are not working with many convictions. You know, I think spiritual bypassing can definitely also be about shutting people down who want to discuss certain things. And I've written about that in my notes as well, because I was kind of trying to clarify for myself what I mean by that and why I don't like it when I see it. And I wrote here, I've seen a lot of blocking and deleting of comments over time whenever someone is asking a spiritual teacher or content creator for confirmation or clarification on a perspective. For example, I have seen, you know, spiritual teachers using the names or the images of sacred indigenous deities or practices for their products and services. And they've been asked about that. They've been asked to clarify, like, what is it that you've learned about that? Or how are you attached to that? Or that is actually a closed practice. Can you explain how you use it in your teachings? And I've seen spiritual teachers just fucking block and delete those comments. Instead of addressing them, instead of owning it, instead of giving their point of view, they have just blocked and deleted. I have seen tarot deck creators blocking and deleting anyone who has a question or a critique about some of the imagery that is being used in the deck that they've created, or some of the titles of cards that have been used. Essentially, what I'm seeing is spiritual teachers who are so highly sensitive that they are putting products and services out into the world, claiming to really believe in what it is that they're teaching or putting forward. But when they experience any questions, any critique, anyone asking to please engage with them about what has been created and why it's been created that way, it's block, delete, you know? It's like block, delete, release, breathe, forgive, you know? Fuck the haters. I'm sorry for them that they feel that way. I'm sorry for them that they have to be so small. They're not being small. They're asking a legitimate question to you, the person who has assumed a degree of spiritual authority to be able to make this product or sell this service or talk about this thing or write this book. They want to understand what your credibility is, what your credentials are, what your intention is with this thing that you've created. And it's okay for you to be able to answer that. It's okay for you to be able to get into a back and forth with someone about that. But there is so much of a desire within spiritual circles to just get rid of any even remotely dissenting opinion, even a legitimate piece of critique, even someone just being like, hey, I saw this and I was wondering if you could clarify. Block, delete, block, delete, delete, block. I just find that really, I don't trust that, you know? And I think that goes into cultural insensitivity, because it's often blocking, deleting, pushing out people who have legitimate concerns based on where they come from, what their practices are, what their concerns are, that might not be concerns for the teacher who is being critiqued or questioned. And so instead of that teacher understanding, like, oh, this person's coming from a different point of view, this person has concerns that maybe I didn't even think of, and maybe I should listen to further understand what those concerns might be, they just like sweep and clear. I only want to hear from people who agree with me. You know, every so often I get somebody coming to me saying, oh, thanks for deleting my comment that disagreed with you. I never delete comments that disagree with me. You're just not seeing it on YouTube for some reason. YouTube comments can be booky. Okay. I don't know what it is, but every so often they just get weird. Like, I don't delete comments unless you were like, you know, Islamophobic, anti-Semitic, misogynistic, you attacked somebody else in my comments section, something like that. I don't delete your comments. I might not engage with them, But over here, you're allowed to have a dissenting opinion. You do not have to fucking agree with me, all right? I might have a little bit of bandwidth consideration when trying to figure out how much I really want to like engage with you on what you've said to me, especially because when people disagree, I get a lot of the same kinds of disagreements anyway. So I've probably answered your disagreement some point or another along the line. But no, I don't sweep and clear. I don't make it so that every single person in the comments agrees with me. I don't feel the need for that. I don't have that kind of hypersensitivity. If I did, I wouldn't do this kind of work. I've seen spiritual teachers and creators block anyone who questions them for using endangered natural products in their practices. I've seen people blocking and deleting comments that are asking clarification on where training was provided. I have seen people be blocked and deleted for raising the concern that somebody is trying to be seen as an expert over and above Indigenous teachers in the same practice who have a lot more experience, who have been doing it for a lot longer. And I just think, you know what, it's worthwhile just engaging with those kinds of comments and responses instead of being like, oh my God, this is not a 100% agreement with what I'm doing. This is not praising me, so I need to get rid of it, you know? I don't like it when just about any request for accountability or further explanation is viewed as aggressive and is a reason to just like get rid of someone from your community. I just find that really upsetting. Above all, and I think this is really the important thing that comes through for me a lot, I don't like it when spiritual spaces try to completely get rid of any discussion about colonialism, about white supremacy, about the treatment of marginalized groups, and about intersectionality in the experience of spiritual teachings or spiritual spaces. If we can't talk about how those things affect us and how confirmation bias or unconscious bias can sometimes color spiritual teaching, how are we going to grow? How are we going to get better at doing what we're doing? How are we going to be more inclusive? How are we going to vibe with each other? We're not. So when someone looks at somebody's concern about colonialism or white supremacy or cultural appropriation or cultural insensitivity, when someone looks at that and they say, you're being divisive, you're being argumentative, I'm going to delete you, it is really that person doing the deleting that is being argumentative and divisive, I think, 95% of the time. There could definitely be some situations that I would look at screenshots of and be like, oh yeah, like definitely that person just does not vibe with what you're saying. Like, that's fine. But in a lot of the instances that I've seen over the course of time, I find it very, very sad the way it usually plays out in this sense where anyone who is just trying to get something clarified or cleared up or explained from their perspective is just ousted. I find that really unfortunate and really sad. I don't like seeing that in the spiritual community. Finally, my loves, I wanted to talk a little bit about veganism, okay? Full disclaimer, I am a vegan, all right? But I think that this opinion is quite measured, okay, as far as vegan opinions go. So hear me out, all right? I don't like it when people are very, very hard line about the fact that if you're not vegan, that's the ultimate issue. You need to get vegan and then you will be getting right with yourself and getting right with spirit. Again, that's a sort of exceptionalism. It's this idea that like, well, veganism is the starting point. If you're not doing that, there's a problem. Because you're not taking into account there people's access to food, people's issues with food, previous eating disorders or current eating disorders that they may have. The fact that for some people, the switch to veganism, even if they really want to do it, is a slow process and it needs to be a very slow process. You know, you're not taking any of those things into account and you're lessening somebody's ability to be spiritual, or you're lessening someone's journey based on that. So I don't like that. But I also do not like what I've seen in the last few years. And if you're vegan and you watch any vegan content, you definitely know what I mean by this. There have been tons of spiritual content creators. You can see quite a few video essays on this exact thing. Tons of creators who built all or most of their business on the fact that they're vegan and their healthy eating, etc., that have ended up going back on their veganism. They are no longer vegan and they have made videos about why it is that they are not vegan. It has been a trend in the last few years, and tons of vegan creators that have been very well respected and very largely followed have done exactly this. They have gone back on their veganism and they have cited things like wanting more of a dietary balance, for example. They've cited things like veganism being extreme and not being necessary for spiritual awareness or spiritual clarity. They have claimed that as long as they thank the animal for its sacrifice, their decision to consume meat is completely valid, that it's natural, etc. A lot of them also listed tons of symptoms that they were experiencing as vegans that ceased as soon as they started eating meat and dairy products again. There's been lots of stuff like that about like symptoms that they claim were caused by the vegan lifestyle. And what's ridiculous is that their symptoms that they describe, things like brain fog, for example, mood swings, stomach issues, that kind of stuff, skin issues, a lot of those symptoms were probably caused by malnutrition or inadequate nutrition, because the type of vegan that these people mostly were was like raw till full or whole food vegan or fruitarian or something like that. I would watch their videos and get the ick, because I would think this is so imbalanced and so extreme. It's so over the top. The portions are either not big enough or they're not containing anywhere near the nutrients that a person needs in order to be healthy by our standard, right? So that really would piss me off as well, that they would be like, oh, you know, I was going through all these symptoms and it was a nightmare and now I'm eating meat and eggs again. It's great. Yeah, sure. But you were doing stuff like water fasting for days on end, you know, like you were doing all of this kind of like raw eating very, very little amounts of things, very, very rigid about what food groups you were consuming. You know, you weren't a relatively normal vegan. Let's fucking face it. Like just an average fucking vegan that's just trying to get along in this world and get enough nutrition. You know, one guy, Tim Sheaf, who went from being a really like ethical, healthy living vegan, who definitely had some extreme ways of implementing his veganism, there's no question. But he went from that all the way to being like a raw food carnivore. And he started going online and going on TV, talking about like how shit veganism is, how you shouldn't be vegan, how this way is much better, you should be eating meat every day. This is a guy who was promoting drinking his own piss. He's got nothing to say about what it takes to be a healthy vegan, because he wouldn't know healthy veganism if it bit him in the fucking ass and gave him a bag of sweets. Okay, so that does annoy me, like that other kind of way of being where people are like, veganism is not healthy, veganism isn't what you should do. I was really ill when I was vegan. Yeah, because you weren't vegan in any kind of fucking sensible way, my guy. That is why. Don't bring down people that want to consider animal rights, okay, in their food choices and in their purchasing choices, because you yourself had a massive problem with not doing things to the absolute fucking extreme. Don't list your symptoms that you experienced from being like a raw food fruitarian for 2 fucking years. Yeah, sure, you experienced some health symptoms, but that's not the animal's fault. And don't start talking to vegans who actually do it the right way about how veganism itself is unhealthy. Your interpretation of veganism and what you were shilling with your books and your videos and your workshops was unhealthy. Don't come to my door and put that shit on me, okay? That winds me up. No, don't like that. Their diets were extreme as fuck. And that is always taken out of the narrative whenever they're making these videos talking about like veganism is not the right way and like, you know, all of that stuff, okay? When they're talking about things like eating meat being natural and thanking the animal for its sacrifice, if you're going back to buying supermarket meat and supporting factory farming, then you're leaving out a very key part of the narrative that does need to be discussed, which is that there is a lot of very, very disgusting and scary and cruel and vile practices in factory farming and in the farming industry. And it is harmful to the environment and it's harmful to the animal life that is, you know, subjugated by that and oppressed by that. So yeah, sure, thank animals for their sacrifice, but thank them also, I think, for being in an abusive, gut-wrenchingly painful experience of being bred for meat, treated as a commodity, subject to things like castration without anesthetic, subject to being kicked, shoved, packed into overcrowded pens, all of that kind of thing, because you're leaving that out of the narrative. And that was a key reason for a lot of you to become vegan in the first place. But when you now want to start shilling your new lifestyle and appealing to people who disagree with veganism, you're leaving that out of the narrative. That's also grossly disingenuous. You know, just because you want to make a personal decision for yourself doesn't mean it's okay to pretend that the choice to be vegan doesn't have some very valid points and ethical points, or that it can't be done in a healthy way. It can be done in a healthy way. So that's just something a little bit more personal to me that I've found really annoying over the past few years, okay? I'm not here to tell you you need to be vegan to get right with Godhead, and I'm definitely not here to tell you that you can't be vegan in a healthy way and that I am like 2.5 seconds from no longer being vegan. No, I'm vegan and that's how it's going to stay, all right? So yeah, that kind of thing, like just be very careful what you're absorbing when it comes to that stuff, because there's a lot of bullshit out there. Darlings, I'm going to leave some articles down below that got my creative juices flowing to make this video, like a little bit of research that was done, some articles that you might want to read about things like conspirituality and stuff like that, and the dark side of wellness and spirituality. I will be making a second video very soon about domineering charismatic spiritual leaders and the danger of a spiritual group turning into a cult and what to look out for when you see that happen. That is coming soon. I have always had a very, very great interest in cults that are based around spiritual teachings and charismatic spiritual leaders. And so I do want to talk about that. I did make a video about things like this in the past, about predatory spiritual practices, and that goes some way to explaining some of the foundations of this video that I'm about to make. So I'll leave that down below if you didn't see that and you want to check that out. And it does go into things within spirituality that I find to be unethical. But the video that's upcoming is going to be more specifically about what to look out for when it comes to spiritual groups that are going to be isolationist, brainwashing, and where you probably are not going to have a very good time if you get further involved. I'm going to be talking quite a lot about the Love Has Won cult that was run by a woman called Amy Carlson. She is dead now, and there is a documentary out on Now TV at the moment that I have watched several times that I find absolutely gripping and very interesting. And so I am going to be going into that cult in particular in that video too, because I have a lot that I want to say on that cult for sure. So it might be two videos, one about Love Has Won and one separately about cults. I don't know. But what I'm hoping I'll be able to do is like intertwine these two videos together. So that's upcoming. Stay safe out there, my darlings. Don't be afraid to question. If something isn't your vibe, pass it by, and don't think that that makes you less spiritual if you want to do so. If you would like a spiritual counseling session with me, a witchy brainstorming session, a tarot reading, or any of the other things I provide, I will leave all of the information to my store down below. Come on over, shop your heart out, get booked into my schedule. And until next time, much love. Blessed be as always, and leave your comments for me down below. Mwah.